Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations and other dignitaries. I hope the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Today we have such guest. Her name is Gail Nayowith. She is the executive director for a organization, not-for-profit organization called SCO. Ms. Nayowith, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking time today.
So happy to be here.
Yep. May I call you Gail?
Yes, please, of course.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So let's talk about you first before we really jump into the organization and its activities. Tell us about yourself. I mean, you are a busy woman.
So I work at an organization called SCO Family of Services, and I run SCO, and it's a large nonprofit, and it keeps me very busy, on my toes, in the car a lot. We have about 115 sites, and I spend a lot of my time on the road, out at my programs. I travel out to Long Island most days from New York City, where I live. And I'm really happy to be out here because it's a very different pace of life. It's a very different work environment, and it gives me an opportunity to get closer to our clients and to the people who work for us. And basically I get to do what I really love, which is that we provide services for vulnerable New Yorkers in Long Island and in New York City. And I get to do work that I love and help people every day, and that is really why I come to work. Very mission driven. I care a lot about making sure that people have opportunities in their lives, and as I said, I keep saying the word help, but it's really about helping make connections between people and opportunities, and helping people get on the right track for a successful life. And so most of what I do every day is focus on that as my main goal.
So before 2011, you joined SCO organization in 2011, right? So before that, can you just talk to us about what is in your life before that?
Sure. So when I finished graduate school, I went to work for the City of New York. I had a bunch of different jobs in health and human services in various city agencies, and I wanted to really understand public service and how government worked and how government helped people, and the challenges that government also experienced in trying to get help to people. And in the late 80s, I went to work in a nonprofit called Citizens Committee for Children of New York, which does public policy advocacy work. And I was there for many years in 3 jobs. The last job was executive director, and I ran CCC for about 15 years. Okay. And we did policy work, mostly focusing on services and program development for children, youth, and families, particularly disadvantaged young people, kids who are poor, living in challenged neighborhoods, and families who had not a lot of supports or opportunity. And the idea really there was to increase opportunity for children, youth, and families. And from CCC, I went to do work for a high net worth individual who wanted to start a foundation. And that was also a tremendously interesting piece of work that I did. I did that for about 3 years, helping create a new foundation for someone who wanted to do more than just individual donations, wanted to really do more philanthropy. And I learned really about how wealthy individuals can make a significant difference also in investing in programs and supports for people, and that was wonderful. And then came to SCO in 2011 because I really wanted to get more practical in my work. And it was wonderful doing policy work at Citizens Committee and doing philanthropy at the foundation, but I really was interested in changing people's lives and having a more direct impact on a more fixed number of children, youth, families, and adults who had needs and that really could have a better life. And I wanted to make a difference in that way.
So tell me something that, you are helping person from the beginning, or did you have any mentor, or do you like, okay, when you grow up, right? I mean, you have certain idols and certain ideas, and was that something in you from the beginning?
So maybe it's more in my family. So,
Okay.
you know, my parents were, both worked in public schools. My mother was a librarian, my father was a teacher, and then what they call a department head in the Philadelphia public schools.
Okay.
And very involved in the community and in civic work. And so they taught us very young that we were supposed to give back and we had to do volunteer work, and there were other things. The expectation was that we would do what we can with the resources that we had to try to help make a better life for other people. It wasn't just about us. And so they instilled in us, my sisters and I, a very strong sense of responsibility and the sort of an obligation to try to make the world a little bit of a better place. It was a family value, and I guess you could sort of put it that way. And so we were encouraged to do volunteer work, and we were encouraged to do things in the neighborhood and to try to make a difference. And from the time I was very young, I actually wanted to help people. I thought that there were ways to make things fairer in the world. And you know, when you're 12 years old, the concept of fairness is a very important concept to wrestle with, right? And so when I was 12, there were things in the world that I didn't understand. I didn't understand why some people had food and some people didn't have food. I didn't understand why people had money. I didn't understand why some people lived in safer neighborhoods and other people lived in neighborhoods that were less safe.
Right.
And, you know, no parent can really answer those questions to the satisfaction of a 12-year-old child, an inquiring mind. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out and working in my own community and with people to try to make a difference. And so when I went to school, to college, having done a lot of volunteer work, I went to school to study, to learn how to be a helping professional. And at that point, I guess I thought that the best way to help people was on a one-to-one. And so some of that is casework or therapy or those kind of things. And that really was not my interest. I was interested much more in the way that services are delivered to people and in how you help large groups of people and how to make change in a community. And so I focused a little bit more on that kind of work. And when I got out of graduate school, I wanted to test out my experiences and my education up till that point. In the public sector. I wanted to work in government, and as I said, I worked in New York City government in a variety of capacities to try to understand how government can make a difference in the lives of people.
Right.
And I quickly came to understand that government can do a tremendous amount for people, but that's not the only way to be helpful. And so then I moved more into the nonprofit sector, and that's kind of how I ended up at SCO. Because I really believe that there is a way, when you run a human service organization, you can help thousands and thousands of people in so many ways. And so we can help individuals who come to us because they need shelter or school or mental health services or a job or daycare, or we can also be an employer. And so SCO, we can do many things at SCO because we're a business as well as a human services organization. And so that appeals to me on a lot of levels because I like running a big business, and I also really like a big business that actually is in the business of helping people. So I get to join all of my interests in my job at SCO.
Yeah, so your background actually helped, and family is parents are the key, mentor for you really. They are the ones who guided you, they give you good values, and that's how you really became what you are.
Yes, I would say so.
Right?
Yeah, it's in the genes, or it's environment and hereditary, right?
Yeah. Well, it's good, we are, also we do a lot of work with health and human services, also, in technology, basically. We help technology-wise, because technology is important in any facet of life right now. So we do a lot of work with health and human services, all the organizations,
It's important. We were talking at a meeting earlier today in the office about the digital divide, and people have different access to technology and how important it is.
Yes.
And for us, we're working very hard at SCO to make sure that our staff have access and that our clients have access, because people are very disadvantaged if they don't have access to the latest technology, whether it's communication or it's for learning. And so it's important. And again, so I get to learn a little bit about communications and technology in my job, and that's also really fascinating.
I agree. Information is everything, and how you make information available to the other side and how they take the information and use
Correct.
it. So that's the most important thing in anywhere actually. And because of technology, it has made it easier for people to really get it. Right? So let's talk about now the organization, SCO, right? SCO helps a lot of people in many different ways. So let's start with like a higher category. What is the larger category of the people that you help?
So we help really 4 groups of people.
Okay.
We help young children.
Okay.
We help youth, school-age kids, teenagers. We help families, and we work also in communities, right? And so that's what we do. And in those areas, okay, we provide what we say are 6 core services. And so we have schools. We do early childhood programming. We have youth services, which include schools and supports. We provide services to families that need support, whether there's abuse or neglect, or families are just having a challenge. And so we call some of those services family supports. We do child welfare services, which are really services that help kids who can't always live with their families. And we work very hard to help keep families together when there's a crisis. We provide homeless shelters services, and we provide services to people who have disabling conditions, whether it's a mental health need or a developmental disability. And so we try across the population groups of young children, school-age children, teenagers, and adults. We try very hard to tailor services around people's needs. So if people are looking for daycare, or they're looking for universal pre-kindergarten, or there's a parent who wants to learn more about child development, we have early literacy. We have food pantries. We have after school. We have 5 residential schools for kids who come and live with us for a school year because they have a special learning need that can't be met in the community. You name it, we do it in Long Island and in New York City. And the goal for us in our community services and our educational services and our developmental programs, which are about healthy living and well-being, is that we want to give people the tools they need to have the best possible life, the most productive and satisfactory life. And so it's important for us to be able to deliver services, where and when and how people need them.
So children, right? You said you help children. Now, children obviously cannot decide that they need help. So it's really parents. They are the one who approach the organization. They are the one who says, okay, my child needs something. This is how it works.
Yeah, I mean, basically,
Or school.
Basically, the problem could be identified by a parent, by a teacher, and sometimes even by a pediatrician. That's usually those are the typical routes.
Okay.
And, when a parent hears that their child might have a special need or there might be a problem, the first thing that happens is that parents get very worried, right? I mean, people get very worried. And the second thing that happens often is that parents feel shame. They feel maybe they did something wrong, or somebody's going to say, "Oh, you didn't do a good job. You're not a good parent."
Right.
And so what we try to do is we try to engage parents in helping them get help in a way that's welcoming and affirming, that doesn't look down on them, that doesn't make them feel badly about the fact that their child might have a special need. I mean, we all have special needs. At one time or another in life, we all need help. And everybody, there's a crisis, something happens, there's a death in the family, somebody loses a job, you lose your housing. Your child has a learning style that's not typical, that's different. There are all kinds of ways that we all need help. And so what we try to do is we have programs that are designed to engage those problems, but in those environments and in that engagement, it's not about people feeling bad or feeling less than or feeling ashamed or embarrassed. And so what we like to say to people is, if you think that your child has a special issue, if they're small for their age, or they're not walking in a way that makes you, they're walking, maybe they have some issues with their gait, or they're slow to crawl, or they don't have all the vocabulary that you think they might have, or they don't read well, or they're having trouble in school. There are hundreds of things. They have special nutritional, it could be anything. Or there's behavior that you don't understand, tantrums, or fear of strangers. And it's something that makes you worry because it's not exactly like a typically developing child would present. You might see something that your child is a little bit different than other children. People shouldn't be ashamed. People shouldn't be afraid to ask for help because there's help out there.
Right.
And there are programs that can help people. And so for us, we start very young. With some of our programs, like Nurse Family Partnership, we start when a woman is pregnant. And we help women who might be at risk with a first pregnancy. We help them by having regular visits from nurses, making sure that there's good prenatal care, making sure that that there's an obstetrician, that the delivery is easy, and then sticking with the new mom usually for 2 years after the baby's born to try to help with bonding and attachment and making sure that the child is getting seen by a pediatrician, is developing typically. And then that's one example of a kind of help with, for a woman with a first-time pregnancy who might be alone or nervous or isn't sure of exactly how to go about being a good parent for people who are very isolated. We also have other programs, early literacy programs, where home visitors go into the house and work with the mother and the baby, or the father and the baby, or the parents and the baby, around learning and play. Because for us, these early relationships are so important. And if anything that interrupts that early relationship is something that we want to try to get a handle on, and to try to help families, parents, feel more comfortable and feel more connected.
Let's say, the example you gave that, if the child is not walking properly or is crawling properly or different behavior, how long one should wait before even approaching you? Because see, many times what happens, there is a conservative thought and there is an aggressive thought, right? Conservative thought says, children is a children, some children learn late and some children learn early. And before even that you start all this thing and medication, it may not be necessary.
Yep.
So what is the correct measurement there?
So there's sort of two extreme examples, right? There's the example of everybody's different and everything is going to be fine, and the child's just going to grow out of it. There's that.
Right.
And then there's the over-determined view, which is immediately move to medication or move to some kind of a therapy, right? So I would say most parents know when they have a concern about their child.
Okay.
Most parents do know. There's a feeling, right? Now, often when parents get that feeling, they'll go to the child's pediatrician first.
Okay.
And ask questions. I'm a little nervous, I'm not really sure, my child doesn't get along with other children, or my child's having a hard time focusing, they're not rolling over, they're not sitting up, they're not able to handle, utensils at the right age, the child can't recognize letters, there's some kind of a behavior, there's something, the sleep, parents feel discomfort. That discomfort generates a question, usually goes to the pediatrician. Often pediatricians will say, you know what, let's watch it for a while, don't get overly anxious, let's just watch it for a while. But there are standards that people use, right? The pediatricians have standards. Parents have even their own standards based on what they know, right? And what their family members know, because somebody else in the family may notice it also. And so when a child is kind of an outlier, when they're a little bit more different than just what normal difference would look like, there are other ways to go then. And at that point, there could be a referral from the pediatrician to a specialist, or the child might be in daycare, or might be in preschool, and the teacher or the caregiver might notice. At that point, there are ways into the system of services that will help parents get what they need, because there are assessments that can be done that are validated assessments, and so you know where your child is based on tests. And I don't mean school tests, I mean behavioral tests, cognitive tests, other kinds of tests, physical examination. And then those tests and assessments really put parents and kids on a path to getting the help that they need. And at a certain level of need, they would come to us for certain kinds of things.
There's no rule really, because I know that certain parents, they want to wait and they want to see that it will go automatically, because as the child grows.
But sometimes that's right. Sometimes that's correct. But it also, for parents who are more anxious or who have a special concern, to feel comfortable raising that concern with a pediatrician or with a teacher,
Right.
or even with a clergy person. If somebody, you know, is in a congregation, a religious congregation, and they're nervous, there's no reason why you can't ask for help. Because the worst thing to do is if you have a fear or you have a worry about your child, not asking anybody. Nobody should be suffering in silence. If there's a concern, you should ask, and people can help you that way. And there are hotlines, and then there's the SCO number, and there are ways that people can direct you to get the help that you need if you feel that your child really needs it. And so it's not just one problem usually, and parents are not going to just see one thing. But it will be a cascade of symptoms or things that they notice. It'll be more than one thing, and it'll happen over a longer period of time, or it'll happen at a more extreme level of behavior, say, or impairment. Parents will sort of also know, and parents are the closest to their children, so that's the first person that would know. And then you go from there. Who's the next person that would know? The pediatrician, the daycare teacher, the school. And all of those people can be helpful.
Yeah, actually, you know, we have our company had developed a system for Roosevelt School District for special kids, and I know that, you know, at the end of the day, even if you do a third party, like, you know, the provider, but you still have to get a consent from the parents, right? I mean, that's a kind of a law.
Parents are the first.
Parents are the
Parents are the first. And, you know, if anybody, you know, in the viewing audience is uncomfortable, they should think about that. And there are people to talk to. And as I said, it's important not to feel any kind of shame or fear. There's no such thing as a stupid question when it comes to child rearing. Nobody has all the answers. And that's true really for everything. And it's also true for teenagers, because that's another period of time where children go through tremendous and rapid change. And those changes also can shape the future for them. And that's another area where people say, oh, you know, teenagers, they're all moody and they all want to sleep and everybody's a little, you know, it's hard. Teenagers are tough. The behavior's tough. They want to test limits. They want to stay out late. They want to hang with their friends. There are things that they want to do. But there's a range of behavior that goes beyond what is normative, right? And so those are places where parents should also be specially attentive, because that's another place where kids need special help. And sometimes parents think that teenagers are defiant, or that they're just sad, and sometimes they have needs that go deeper than that. And you don't want to ignore those warning signs either. You want to try to get help, because nobody can do it alone. I think, what do they say? It takes a village.
Right.
It takes a village, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about the over medication. You know, like, I know that you know, I'm very conservative in taking medication. We don't even use Tylenol. You know, we just rather sleep and get a headache over it, right? Now, many times, you know, children, when the child has some issues or parents identify some issues and they go through some psychiatric problem and giving medication, I feel like it's really too much. Is that what you feel?
So, you know, I think there are certain groups of children who have behavior that people find very hard to tolerate and manage. And I think that medication for behavior management is something that parents really struggle with, trying to find that balance.
Right.
And again, there are extremes. And then there's the typically developing child. There are young people who need medication to help them so that they don't hurt themselves or other people, and so that they can function in the world and develop all of their capacities. But not everybody. It's like allergies. Some allergies can be dealt with just not by eating the food.
Right.
Some allergies are in the environment and you have to take other precautions. And some allergies are so severe that if you come in contact with something, you have to have a medication response right away, or it will be life-threatening. It's the same with psychiatric medications, with psychotropic medications. You know, it depends. There needs to be a good diagnosis, there needs to be a good assessment, and it needs to really be looked at. And if there is a serious disorder of thought or of mood, a serious disorder of behavior that makes it risky for the child in the community, risk to someone, risk to the child, young person, then medication is called for. But it's all very individual. It's very, very individual. And, you know, it's not for experimentation. And it's not, you know, I mean, there's a lot of conversation too now about performance-enhancing medication, right? Where kids take drugs so they can do better on a test.
Right.
That's not really, you know, the best thing.
I mean, that's too much, right?
It's probably not the best thing.
Yeah, I think it's too much.
It's probably not the best thing. I think what we want is we want the right balance. We want a balance of therapy and intervention. Sometimes it's medication, sometimes it's talking, sometimes it's an activity. There are various ways to develop what we would call a treatment plan or a service plan, and those plans can be individualized, customized for the children. Sometimes medication is a piece of that, but not always. But again, like I said, if you are anemic or you have an allergy or you have asthma, if you have a condition that can be addressed with medication, you should have medication. But if you don't need the medication and there are other ways to go, then we can help you with that too.
See, the problem is, right now in this today's day and age, right, both parents are working many times, right, and they don't have really time to go through all this thing. And therefore, it's very difficult for them to really go to work, come back, and they still have to do their housework, and then still have to pay attention on the children, whether they need this special needs or not. I mean, it's difficult to manage, really.
Right, but but school or childcare is a great place for those for issues to be dealt with, because there are other adults there who can help the parents, and it's not a failing on the parents' part. It is true that in modern times, people are working very hard just to make ends meet and to try to support their families, their kids, and so what we have in our programs is the ability for other adults to help the children become all of who they can be, and to help learn different ways of behaving, to figure out how to learn differently. I mean, our schools serve kids who have very, very different learning needs. Some of our children don't have expressive language, and we work with them on what we call a PEC system to point to what they need. And there are all different kinds of ways to do that. Parents are not skilled at that. Parents don't know how to. That's not what parents learn. But we work with parents to do that at home. But the basic skill development happens with professional people in a program. We also have after-school programs, which are not specialized. But if there's a special need that is identified, we can again work with the parents to provide supports. But that's our job. Our job is to provide a substitute or an enhancement to what can be provided at home. And that's really what we do.
So let's talk about, this is something very important to me actually, like over-medication in our country, right? And I feel like, I've seen a lot of people where, even the child is like 2 years old and they're giving some psychiatric medicine which may have some adverse effect or other effect of it, which, it won't show up immediately, but it will show up 2 years later, 5 years later, whatever. So give me your views on medication and over-medication, right? Because, I think it's important.
So, at SCO, our philosophy really is that the treatment really relates to the individual needs of the child or the teenager or the adult, right? There's no one size fits all. There's no one prescription that works for everyone. And so where medication is necessary, it has a wonderful effect. We know that when there's a disease, there's a medication that can help cure a disease. But not everything can be cured with medication. There are other ways to help. And so the idea is not to rush to medication necessarily, but if there is the need, then of course people should use it. That's what it's for. It's just a tool. We were talking earlier about technology. We would never say to people, don't use a telephone. Run from your house to the neighbor's house to tell people what's important to you. No. You use the tools that are there because that's where we are in an advanced society. But there are problems with over-medication. There also, for some population groups, there's problems of under-medication. There are kids who can't get access, even in New York, cannot get access to the medication that they need. And so a lot of that is an expert diagnosis, right? You want to actually go to a doctor or a physician, a physician's assistant, to get advice about what your child needs, and that the treatment should make sense on its face. How much is medication? Maybe there's a special program. There are lots of different ways to address the needs of children without medication, but sometimes medication is necessary, and just like vaccinations, it's there and you can use it, and it solves a problem, right? And so for us, we have a family services clinic out in Suffolk County in Dix Hills, and we do outpatient mental health services for children and families and adults. And our clinic provides talk therapy for individuals. We also do group work. And when necessary, medication. We prescribe medication when people need it. Often, medication is prescribed for a mood disorder.
Right.
Or for a thought disorder. And that's more like a hallucination or a delusion. That's very atypical. And that's what medication is prescribed for. Sometimes for behavior disorders, but by and large, it's a combination of medication and a different kind of a therapy that makes the biggest difference. It's not usually just medication ever. And that's true whether it's an allergy, or whether it's a mental health issue. It's usually more than just one thing. So our family services clinic can prescribe medication, but it can also prescribe, as I said, talk therapy, group therapy, play therapy. Those things are available. Our programs that serve adults who have substance abuse problems, those are problems that you don't want to address with medication only, right? You want to address that through sobriety. And so the treatment of choice in that case is not medication. The treatment of choice in that case is creating a vibrant peer community and access to supports so that there is no drug use, right? No alcohol or drug use. And so it's very different. People need different things. Individuals need different things. Families have different needs. And so from an SCO perspective, we try to provide the service that an individual or family needs when, where, and how they need it. Medication is a small piece of what we do.
But let me ask you this now, that I have a lot of friends who are in medicine, medical practitioners, right? And we have a candid discussion. He says, listen, if you come to me with a problem, what do you think? I'm not going to say there is a problem, and if I don't give you medication, if something happens, then I get sued. So if you come to me saying that I have a problem, I have to treat you.
Well, I don't know. I don't have any doctors that work like that. My doctors never give me prescriptions unless I actually need them. So I don't know really who your friends are going to.
So doctors are allowed to say you don't need anything.
My doctors say it all the time.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
I can only tell you. You know what? This is the lecture that I get in primary care.
Okay.
It's overprescription of antibiotics.
Right.
And it's making it's making viruses disease resistant. So I'm not giving you, because you have a virus, I can't give you medication.
Right.
Medication doesn't help with a virus. Medication helps with an infection.
Right.
So that's what my doctor tells me. And there are days where you go and you have a high fever and you feel miserable and you want somebody to give you relief, right?
Right.
No. So again, it's using judgment. If you have a cold, there are symptoms that can be relieved. It's not the same thing, So we also live in a society where there are drugstores in every corner. You can drive to the drugstore and you can find medication for everything.
Right.
But that's not the only way to go, right? And so, in a way, there's a self-help culture. In a way, there's a medication culture. For us, our philosophy of services is not to replace people's judgment, but it's not to do every single thing that people ask either. I mean, in a therapeutic relationship or in a professional relationship, there are boundaries, right? You don't just write a prescription because somebody asks for it.
Okay.
You don't just give people help that they need. It depends on what kind of help. If somebody comes to you and they say, I don't have food for my children, well, we're going to help you with the food,
story,
right?
Yeah. Right.
Or, we were kicked out of our house. We were evicted. That's a different kind of a crisis, right? And so you help people because you meet people where they are.
Right.
But if somebody comes to our office and says, I need this kind of medication because I have this, this, and this, well, nobody's going to write a prescription for them. That's not really how it works, because everything starts with an assessment and a conversation. And you assess how serious the need is. You assess whether it's a crisis situation. I mean, after the hurricane out here, there were people who were flooded out of their houses.
Right.
We provided all kinds of immediate relief to people to make sure that they and their children and their families were safe, and that they had a place to live, and so forth and so on.
What is a typical problem? Let's say, for example, you have 1,000 cases, and most of, many times you have a general, this is what normally I get the problems right there. For the child.
Right. So when people come to SCO for help with their kids, they come for a couple reasons.
Okay.
One is that parents are working and they need childcare.
Okay.
And so people will come to us looking for childcare as one example.
Okay.
I need a safe place where my child's going to be comfortable and safe and learn, get nutritious meals,
Right.
and interact with peers. And so we can satisfy that need. Particularly in New York City, we have a number of early childhood programs where parents can feel very comfortable dropping their children off while they go to work, picking them up, and in the end, kids are ready for school. And that's a beautiful thing. It works for everyone. After school is another typical thing that parents ask us for, because they have kids who go to school. School ends at 3 o'clock. Work doesn't end till 5,
right.
and they need an hour to commute. What are we going to do between the hours of 3 and 6?
Right.
And so after school is another thing that parents come to us for. And we do after school that's school-based, in a school building. We do after school in community centers. And so we make those kind of services available. Also, people come to, those are the most sort of typical. People also come to us when they're having specific kinds of problems at home.
Right.
If there is domestic violence, or they are suffering from extreme poverty, or the parent has a medical condition or a mental health problem of their own, and the children need supervision and some more security. So we provide preventive services that help families that are really at risk in a very serious way. We provide support to families in home to help parents and keep families together, and that's a kind of a critical service. And then another thing that we do for children is when parents can't take care of their children, we provide substitute care through foster care, foster families, where we provide an alternative parenting arrangement for children who live in the community with a foster family until they can go home and live with their biological parents.
Okay, so all these services that you mentioned, is this obviously, it's not free?
Well, most of the services that we provide don't have a fee attached to it for the families or for the child, because the government pays for that. So the government will have a contract with us, and we deliver services in a particular community of a particular type, and people who are eligible can be served.
Okay, so that next question comes up with my eligibility here. How one is eligible, how can they be eligible, rather?
So,
what are the criteria?
So depending on what people need,
Right.
we make it to help them make a determination about whether there's a small fee or whether it will happen for free. Services are provided either at low cost or no cost.
Okay.
And so it's basically an assessment of family resources. For example, for families who have Medicaid, which is a public health insurance program, those families can take their Medicaid card or go through their managed care company and come to one of our clinics or one of our programs. Child care can have a sliding fee scale depending on how much money parents make. But the idea is to keep services affordable. So I say low cost, no cost, based on people's ability to pay.
So, okay, so that's great. So now let's move to the teenage. Okay, what is the typical problem that teenagers come to you?
Most of the teenagers that come to us have behavior problems, very challenging behaviors, whether they're truant in school or they are defiant to their parents. Those young people, we live with their parents and we help the family and the young person at home. Or we engage the young person in more constructive activities, after school, youth programs, internships, mentorships, those kind of things. For young people who have very, very challenging behaviors with other special learning needs, we have residential schools for them. Young people can come and go to school with us. And they can see their families on the weekends or during the summers, but they can go to special schools where their behavior is really normal, and they're with other kids who have behavior that is like theirs. And who have learning needs that are like theirs, and they can do well in school. So we have, as I said, 5 residential campuses where kids go. It's like a boarding school kind of an arrangement for kids with special needs, teenagers mostly, and then kids who are older elementary school and through teenage years. We have a wonderful school here in Westbrook called Westbrook Prep, which is a program that serves teenagers who have Asperger's syndrome, which is on the autistic spectrum, and they're kids who have special learning needs and special behavior needs, and those young people don't do well in a regular public school. And the goal for us is to help these young people get a Regents diploma and go on to college or career.
Oh, okay, good. Now let's talk about the jobs. You know that you also have a program where you help people getting jobs. How does that work?
So there are many different programs. We've got a program in Brooklyn that incubates cooperatives, which are worker-owned businesses.
Okay.
And so these are businesses, house cleaning services, dog walking service, home repair. I mean, everything. People do everything, right? We've had a number of different programs that we've developed with the workers themselves, helping people get business licenses, get training, get legal advice, work on branding, figure out how to do marketing. And so we have a very successful cooperative development, co-op development set of programs in Brooklyn. We also do subsidized employment for teenagers in the summer youth employment, where we place a young person in a job and they get a stipend and they work. That gives kids a first job, an entry-level job. We also do internships of various sorts, and we work with our adolescents, our young teenagers who might be living with us, whether they're in foster care or they're living in one of our shelters. We try to link them with jobs in the community and provide support for them. We have employment opportunities for adults who have developmental disabilities. We've got a team of adults who do inter-office mail for SCO, and they're responsible for mail distribution in all of our offices out on Long Island. And they have a route and they have a van, and we couldn't survive without them. And so we have work that pays, we have work that provides their support, and it's on the continuum of work in the local economy and in a private business, and work in worker-owned businesses and across the board.
So this is not for like people who are already in the program, or even out of program people also can take advantage of this thing.
So we don't do workforce development per se. There are other organizations where you come to apply for a job.
Right. Okay.
But SCO is a big employer. We have 4,000 people who work for us, and we're always looking for people who want to work in the human services and want to make a difference in the lives of people with special needs.
Right.
And so we are an employer also, and so people can come to us looking for work. If they're in the helping professions and they want to work directly with people, we have jobs. Very often there are job vacancies where we can help people who want to make a difference in the lives of people.
Where somebody can start, like for example, if someone needs any kind of services, obviously where should they start and how do they start?
Well, an easy way to start is going on our website, which is www.sco.org.
Okay.
And there's a listing of programs there. We have a program directory. You can go, there are maps, so if you're living in if you're living in New York City or out on Long Island, you can look close to home and you can find services. There is again a program directory there that will give descriptions of the program and contact information. And there's a way to click through to just send a message, and then we will be able to get back to you through the website portal, or people can call us, and that's the other way. I mean, they're really, those are the two best ways to reach us, either online or by calling our central number, and I can give one of our central numbers, 516-671-1253, and we can route people that way also.
Okay, so first thing is that you call or go to website and register yourself, and then you get to talk to somebody within the organization who will go through your whatever the application process and all that,
and help direct you. And the other way to do it is if you're in a community and you see an SCO program office, and you'll recognize us. It's a sort of a turquoise blue sign with our SCO logo. If you see that sign and you see an SCO sign on an office building or in a program in a neighborhood where you live, walk in, and we'll help you find services there. I mean, it may not be the right program in that location, but we'll help you find the right program. So that's the other way. People can walk into one of our offices, they can go online, or they can call us.
Well, I really want to thank you for your time today, but before we end, I just want to tell you one thing, that I did look at your prior annual reports, and you are more than $690 million organization, which is pretty large not-for-profit organization. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're a little bit smaller than that, but yeah, we're one of the largest. We're one of the largest human service organizations in the state of New York, and we serve about 60,000 people every year. We have about 4,000 employees, and we work very hard every day to help people have the lives that they really need to have and the lives that they want to have. And that's really our goal, is to make a difference for everyone. And we say life-changing results, and we really mean that.
Continue to do that.
Thank
That's
you.
all I can tell you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. You can also watch our prior programs on YouTube at youtube.com/Infosys International. Again, that's youtube.com/Infosys International. Until next time, have a great week.